So recently on TSN, we're talking about the all-time team of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, uh, some of the decisions were kind of wrong. He left Jacques Lemaire off the list. But for me, statistically, we talked before the previous podcast. 1976-77 Montreal Canadiens were the best team ever. There's no doubt about it. The majority of the players on the team made the Hall of Fame, including Lafleur, Schott, Robinson, Lapointe, Lemaire, Cornway, Savard, Gainey, and Dryden. Now, there's some argument if Peter Mahovlich or Doug Jarvis should make it Peter because of his dedicated play, his international presence, and Doug Jarvis because he's consecutive game streak in the Iron Man, his consistency on defense. But let's put some statistics in very, very quickly. Just be a short podcast. Now, he had 13 key players that year, four strong lines. This is a team where a quality player like John Van Boxmeer, who he had drafted previously, couldn't make the team. He couldn't bump out Rick Chartrand or Pierre Bouchard. You had Savard, Robinson, and Lapointe, with Billy Nyrop as the number four. Bill Nyrop, a great defensive player. So you had those three players. Now that year, Montreal, there's only two players that had more than 100 points. Only two players more than uh, 35 goals. That was Schott and Lafleur. Now, Lafleur that year had 136 points, a plus minus of 89, with 42 even strength goals and 14 on the power play. Now, Robinson led all players that year, one of the greatest statistical seasons of all time. He only had 85 points on the year, but he was plus 120, despite as well having 45 minutes in the sin bin. Now, Lapointe ended that year with 76 points. Jacques Lemaire had 75 points, including 34 goals. And again, Mahovlich, who was being forced out a little bit, had 62 points. Now, the Risebrough, Tremblay, Lambert line, which was considered the number two line in Montreal, got well over 150 points. Risebrough had 38 assists and 60 points total. Lambert had 28 assists and 52 points total, while Tremblay had 46 points, including 18 goals and 28 assists. Reggie Houle, who was basically a third liner, had 22 goals. And this was even before Pierre Mondoux showed up. And the playoff run was outstanding. They only lost two games towards the Stanley Cup, won 60 games in the regular season, and only lost one key game after Christmas. Now, what makes that team consistent is not only everybody was peaking at the right time. They're coached by Scotty Bowman. The overall impact of the team on the road and in the form. Now, another thing, there's been statistics saying that every game that Montreal played in that year, other than three or four, were sellouts. They were as big on the road as they were at home. Famous game in Landover, Washington, where the Capitals almost won, where there was standing room only seats. Toronto, he would sell out. Rangers, Detroit, all over the league. But what really stands out for Montreal that year is that every Saturday night, by the time the end of the second period was over, the game was done. It was 5-2, 5-1. Most games, Montreal turned it down in the third period, giving the third line a chance to play, giving defensive players like Bouchard, Chartrand, Nyrop more ice time. If he really would load it on the score like the old Oilers did, he could have scored 450 goals that year. He could have won every game, the big games against the key teams. Instead of 5-2, be 7-2, and against the weaker teams, 7-1 instead of 5-1. Now, this wasn't an egotistical team. It was good camaraderie on the bench, good camaraderie overall. Talked about a little bit of Ken Dryden's game. So, as we wrap up this podcast, just remember that when people see a Montreal Canadiens hat in public, and people like me who are age of 50, we're not celebrating the Montreal Canadiens of 86 or 93. We're celebrating mostly the 1970s Montreal Canadiens from 1971 with the miracle against the Bruins in Game 2 in the 7-game series, all the way up to the infamous Jacques Lemaire half-ice goal, not against Chicago in 71, but against the Rangers in 79. And the Montreal Canadiens were Canada's team on and off pretty well for the whole decade of the 1970s. Expos a little bit into the early 80s, Blue Jays quite a bit in the 80s as well. For the 1970s, the team of the decade. No disrespect to the Edmonton Eskimos. No disrespect to the Montreal Alouettes. No disrespect to even the Winnipeg Jets of the WHA. They were the Montreal Canadiens of the WHA. Montreal was Canada's team. Anybody denies it, well, I can't help morons like you because you're going around, as we like to say in The Simpsons, acting moronically. So a lot of videos on 1977 Montreal Canadiens out there, a lot of stats. Look it up, and the numbers don't lie. The numbers are just mind-boggling. Good to a thesis on the Montreal Canadiens of that decade, as we say. So on this COVID Friday, we wish everybody good health. Keep it thick in the ice, and have a good afternoon.